Strange tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Strange Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you two short stories. The first story is titled Lady Zhen. In the city of Luoyang, there lived a man named Liu Zhongkan. Since childhood, Liu had been of ordinary aptitude, but he harbored an inexplicable passion for reading. He often secluded himself in his study, immersing himself in books, rarely interacting with others. One day, as Liu was deeply engrossed in his reading, a peculiar fragrance filled the air. Shortly after, he heard the faint sound of jade pendants or ornaments clinking against each other. Startled, he looked around in surprise and saw a graceful beauty walking into his study. This woman had an exquisite face, and her hairpins and earrings sparkled brilliantly. Every movement she made exuded an air of elegance and nobility. Behind her followed a group of maids dressed in courtly attire. Overcome with shock and fear, Liu hurriedly prostrated himself in respect. The woman, however, smiled gently, stepped forward to help him up, and said, "You used to be so proud and impolite. Why are you now so humble and courteous?" Liu became even more flustered and uneasy. He replied, "I don't know where the celestial lady comes from, and I've never had the honor of meeting you before. If I've offended you in the past, I honestly can't remember." The beauty chuckled softly and said playfully, "How could you forget so quickly? It hasn't been that long since we parted. You were the one sitting straight-backed, grinding a brick, wasn't that you?" With that, she ordered her maids to lay out an embroidered brocade quilt and prepare fine wines and delicacies. Taking Liu by the arm, she invited him to drink with her. As they exchanged toasts, the woman began discussing ancient history and various philosophies. Liu was struck by her vast knowledge and found himself unable to respond, utterly bewildered. The beauty, noticing his awkwardness, laughed and remarked, "I only went to one feast at the Jade Pool before, and yet you've lived through so many lifetimes. How could you have lost all the cleverness you used to have?" With a teasing smile, she summoned a maid to bring over a bowl of crystal-clear jelly-like dessert. She handed it to Liu, urging him to drink. After finishing the bowl, Liu felt refreshed, his mind sharper and clearer than before. As night fell, the maids departed, leaving only the beauty and Liu in the room. Soon, she extinguished the lamps, disrobed, and lay beside him. They rested together in harmony, enjoying each other's company. Before dawn, the maids returned in single file. The beauty rose to get dressed, but to Liu's amazement, her appearance remained flawless, her attire and hair perfectly in place, as if she had never lain down. Liu, reluctant to let her leave, eagerly asked for her name. The woman smiled faintly and said, "I guess there's no harm in telling you, though it might just confuse you even more. I'm Zhen. In your previous life, you were Liu Zhen. Back then, you suffered misfortune because of me, and I've felt guilty about it ever since. Meeting you today is my way of repaying the affection you once showed me." Liu Zhongkan hurriedly asked, "Then where is Cao Pi, Emperor Wen of Wei, now?" Lady Zhen smiled faintly and replied, "Cao Pi? He was merely a mediocre son of that treacherous father of his, Cao Cao. As for me, I only happened to be reborn as a human and played along with those nobles for a few years. After my death, I naturally had no more dealings with them. Cao Pi, because of his father Cao Cao's actions, has remained stuck in the underworld. As for his current state, I have no idea. However, his brother, Cao Ji, who was truly gifted, now manages documents for the Heavenly Emperor. I occasionally still see him. As she finished speaking, a magnificent dragon carriage suddenly appeared in the courtyard. Lady Zhen handed Liu Zhongkan a jade rouge box as a parting gift, then turned and boarded the carriage, which ascended into the clouds. Unexpectedly, from that day on, Liu Zhongkan became extraordinarily talented at writing. His abilities were no longer what they used to be, and his works gained remarkable depth and skill. However, he began to think of Lady Zhen every night, to the point where he could neither eat nor drink. A few months later, his body had become so frail that he was barely recognizable. Liu Zhongkan's mother grew deeply worried but did not know the cause of his ailment. In the household, there was an elderly maid who had been observing the situation. One day, she quietly approached Liu Zhongkan and asked, "Young master, are you missing someone?" Liu Zhongkan did not hide his feelings and recounted everything to the old maid in detail. The maid pondered for a moment before suggesting, "Young master, you could write her a letter. I might be able to deliver it for you." Liu Zhongkan was stunned, both astonished and overjoyed. He asked, "You have such an ability? If you can help me accomplish this, I will forever be indebted to you." Without delay, he carefully wrote a letter, folded it neatly, and handed it to the old maid. Late at night, the old maid returned, smiling as she said, "Mission accomplished." When I reached the gatekeeper mistook me for a demon and tied me up. I showed him the letter you wrote, and he delivered it to the lady. Before long, she called me inside. She read your letter and sighed repeatedly, saying she could no longer meet you. However, she still wrote a reply. I was anxious and told her that you had become so lovesick over her that you couldn't eat or drink, and your health was failing. I said one reply wouldn't be enough. The lady thought deeply for a long time before putting down her pen and told me, "Go back and tell him I will send him a good wife." As I was about to leave, she added, "What I've said just now is tied to Liu's future. Do not spread it around, and he will be able to stay with his wife forever." Upon hearing this, Liu Zhongkan was overjoyed and waited eagerly with great anticipation. The next day, an elderly woman with white hair arrived at Liu's house, bringing with her a stunning young lady to meet Liu Zhongkan's mother. The girl was breathtakingly beautiful, with an extraordinary grace rarely seen in the world. The old woman introduced herself as Madame Chen, claiming the girl was her daughter, named Si Xiang, and expressing willingness to marry her to Liu Zhongkan. Liu's mother took an immediate liking to Si Xiang and began discussing the marriage arrangements and dowry with Madame Chen. Strangely, Madame Chen refused any payment, sitting quietly until the wedding was completed before leaving without a word. Everyone found her behavior peculiar, but only Liu Zhongkan understood the truth. After the wedding, Liu Zhongkan privately asked Si Xiang, "What is your relationship with Madame Zhen?" Si Xiang replied, "I was a songstress in the Tongkai Terrace." Liu Zhongkan was shocked and asked cautiously, "Are you a ghost?" Si Xiang shook her head with a smile and said, "I'm not a ghost. Originally, Madame Zhen and I were both immortals. Due to a mistake, we were punished and sent to the mortal realm. After spending time among humans, Madame Zhen's sentence ended, and she regained her celestial status. However, my punishment period has not yet been completed. Out of compassion for our bond, Madame Zhen petitioned the celestial gods to allow me to stay by her side as a half-ghost, half-immortal. This time, she arranged for me to stay with you, so I can accompany you for a long time." One day not long after, a blind old beggar woman arrived at Liu's house, leading a yellow dog. She was tapping bamboo clappers and singing crude folk tunes. Out of curiosity, Si Xiang stepped outside to see what was happening. The moment she crossed the threshold, the yellow dog broke free from its leash and lunged at her. Terrified, Si Xiang turned to run, but it was too late. The dog had already grabbed hold of her sleeve and tore it off. Seeing this, Liu Zhongkan hurriedly grabbed a stick to drive the dog away. But the dog only became more furious, savagely ripping the sleeve into shreds. The blind old woman quickly reached for the fur on the dog's neck and managed to leash it again. She then led the dog away, leaving Liu Zhongkan and Si Xiang in shock. Returning to the house, Liu Zhongkan saw that Si Xiang was still shaken. Curious, he asked, "You are an immortal. How can you be afraid of an ordinary yellow dog?" Si Xiang sighed softly and replied, "You don't get it. That dog is actually Chow Chow in this life. In my previous life, I was one of his concubines. Before he died, he ordered all his concubines to stay chaste for him. When he saw me today, he attacked me out of resentment, probably because I didn't follow his command." Hearing this, Liu Zhongkan was filled with rage and wanted to buy the dog and kill it. However, Si Xiang stopped him, saying, "Since the king of the underworld has already punished him by turning him into a dog in this life, how can we take it upon ourselves to kill him? Just let it go and don't think about it anymore." 2 years passed quickly, and Si Xiang's stunning beauty began to draw the attention of neighbors. Everyone grew curious about her origins. Whenever they asked, her responses were always vague, which only deepened their suspicions. Some neighbors even spread rumors, claiming she might be a demon. Liu's mother, having heard these rumors, became increasingly uneasy and pressed Liu Zhongkan for the truth. Reluctantly, Liu Zhongkan revealed some of Si Xiang's background. His mother was horrified and tried to convince him to end the relationship immediately, but Liu Zhongkan refused. Seeing no other option, Liu's mother secretly invited a Taoist priest who specialized in exorcism to the house. The priest set up a spiritual altar in the courtyard and began preparing rituals to banish Si Xiang. Si Xiang, noticing what was happening, looked sorrowful. She softly said to Liu Zhongkan, "I had hoped to grow old with you, but now that your mother doubts me, it seems our fate together has come to an end. Forcing me to leave is no great difficulty, but it will take more than a useless Taoist muttering incantations." With that, she grabbed a bundle of straw, set it alight, and threw it down the steps. Instantly, thick smoke enveloped the house, blotting out the sky. Thunderous sounds roared through the air. When the smoke finally cleared, the Taoist priest was found dead, bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Panicked, Liu Zhongkan rushed back into the house, only to find that Si Xiang had vanished. He tried to call for the old maid to ask for answers but discovered that she too was nowhere to be found. Later, Liu Zhongkan told his mother, perhaps that old maid was actually a fox spirit in disguise. At the end of the story, the author added a reflective commentary. Lady Zhen, wife of Cao Pi and the first empress of Cao Wei, was initially married to Yuan Shao, one of the prominent warlords during the late Eastern Han dynasty. Later, she became the wife of Cao Pi, the son of Cao Cao and the founding emperor of Cao Wei. Unexpectedly, she developed a deep affection for the poet Liu Zhen, and even after returning to the celestial realm, she was willing to defy divine order and descend to the mortal world to reunite with him. Such a scenario seems almost unimaginable. Yet, upon reflection, someone like Cao Cao, who usurped the Han dynasty and caused suffering among the common people, how could his son possibly deserve a virtuous wife like Lady Zhen? In the story, Cao Cao is reincarnated as a yellow dog, which should have freed him from his mortal obsessions, including the chastity of his concubines. However, his jealousy remained unshaken. Alas, for such a formidable figure as Cao Cao, who refused to achieve enlightenment even after reincarnation, it is ironic that later generations often view him with sympathy. This is truly regrettable. The story also delves into Lady Zhen's account of her connection with Liu Zhen. Liu Zhen was a renowned scholar and poet during the late Eastern Han dynasty. Not only was he well-read and eloquent, but he also served as an assistant to Cao Cao and maintained a close friendship with Cao Cao's sons, Cao Pi and Cao Zhi. According to the Shishua Sinew from the southern dynasties, during a banquet hosted by the Cao family, Cao Pi brought his wife, Lady Zhen, to meet the guests. The attendees, intimidated by the power of Cao Cao and his sons, all prostrated themselves on the ground, not daring to look at Lady Zhen. However, Liu Zhen was the only one who raised his head and gazed directly at her. In the societal norms of the time, such behavior was deemed extremely disrespectful, especially from a subordinate to a superior. When Cao Cao learned of this, he became furious and had Liu Zhen arrested and sentenced to hard labor. Cao Pi questioned Liu Zhen, asking, "Why did you disregard proper etiquette?" Liu Zhen replied, "I am but an uncouth and crude man, careless about minor formalities, but the laws your father has enacted are too severe to avoid violating." On the surface, Liu Zhen was admitting his rough demeanor and lack of propriety, but in truth, he was subtly criticizing the excessively harsh laws that punished even minor offenses, deeming them inhumane. There are also unofficial accounts claiming that Lady Zhen was indeed extraordinarily beautiful. Cao Cao's fury over Liu Zhen's actions and Cao Zhi's famous long poem, Ode to the Goddess of the Luo River, both stemmed from their admiration for Lady Zhen. Thus, some believe that Liu Zhen may have harbored romantic feelings for Lady Zhen, and it is from this premise that the story unfolds. The second story is titled Zhai Yang. Late one night, a hunter lay in ambush in the mountains, holding his breath as he waited for prey to appear. Suddenly, under the moonlight, he spotted a small dwarf slowly making its way through the mountain stream below. The dwarf stood just over 2 feet tall, with an odd appearance, wandering alone among the hills. Before long, another figure, equally small, emerged from the opposite direction. The two dwarfs met face to face. The hunter pricked up his ears and faintly heard them begin to talk, asking each other where they were headed. The first dwarf spoke, "I'm on my way to visit Zhai. The other day, I noticed his complexion didn't look good, likely, something unlucky is about to happen to him." The second dwarf nodded and replied, "You're right. I'm here for the same reason." Hearing this, the hunter realized that these two dwarfs were not human. He suddenly let out a loud shout. At the sound, the two dwarfs vanished instantly, leaving no trace behind. Later that same night, the hunter's luck turned, and he caught a fox. The fox's fur was sleek and shiny, but on its left eye was a scar the size of a copper coin. Alright. That's all for today's tales, Lady Zhen and Zhai. If you enjoyed these stories, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment and share it with others. See you next time.